Merle Oberon was an Anglo-Indian actress. She began her film career in British films as Anne Boleyn in The Private Life of Henry VIII. After her success in The Scarlet Pimpernel, she travelled to the United States to make films for Samuel Goldwyn. She was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance in The Dark Angel. A traffic collision in 1937 caused facial injuries that could have ended her career, but she soon followed this with her most renowned performance in Wuthering Heights. Throughout her adult life, in order to conceal her Indian heritage, she maintained the fiction that she was born in Tasmania, Australia. She concocted a story that all her school records had been destroyed in a fire, which meant it could be neither proven nor disproven. She maintained these fictions throughout her professional life. The year before she died, she finally admitted this story was not true, and records located since her death have confirmed her true origin. Early life: Estelle Merle Thompson was born in Bombay, British India on February 19, 1911. According to some sources, her birth name was Estelle Merle O'Brien Thompson. Merle was given Queenie as a nickname, in honour of Queen Mary, who visited India along with King George V in 1911. Over the years, Oberon obscured her parentage. Some sources claim Merle's parents to have been Arthur Terence O'Brien Thompson, a British mechanical engineer from Darlington, who worked in Indian Railways, and Charlotte Selby, a Eurasian from Ceylon with partial Maori heritage. However, at the age of 14, Charlotte had in Ceylon given birth to her first child, Constance, the result of a relationship with Henry Alfred Selby, an Irish foreman of a tea planter, and Constance, 12 at the time of Merle's birth, was actually her biological mother. Despite this, Charlotte raised Merle as her own child and as Constance's sister. Charlotte's partner, Arthur Thompson, was listed as the father in Merle's birth certificate, with the forename misspelled as Arthur. Constance eventually married and had 4 other children: Edna, Douglas, Harry and Stanislaus, with her husband Alexander Soares. Edna and Douglas moved at an early age to the UK, and Harry later in life moved to Toronto, Canada, and retained Constance's maiden name, Selby. Stanislaus was the only child to keep his father's last name of Soares, and he currently resides in Surrey, British Columbia, Canada. All the siblings reportedly believed Merle to be their aunt, when in fact she was their half-sister. When Harry Selby tracked down Merle's birth certificate in Indian government records in Bombay, he was surprised to discover he was in fact Merle's brother and not her nephew. He attempted to visit her in Los Angeles, but she refused to see him. Harry withheld this information from Oberon's biographer Charles Hyam, only eventually revealing it to Marie Delovsky, the creator of The Trouble with Merle, a 2002 documentary produced by the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, which investigated the various conflicting versions of Merle's origin. In 1914, Arthur Thompson joined the British Army and later died of pneumonia on the Western Front during the Battle of the Somme. Merle, with Charlotte, led an impoverished existence in shabby Bombay flats for a few years. Then, in 1917, they moved to better circumstances in Calcutta. Oberon received a foundation scholarship to attend La Martiniere Calcutta for Girls, one of the best private schools in Calcutta. There, she was constantly taunted for her unconventional parentage and eventually quit school and received her lessons at home. Oberon first performed with the Calcutta Amateur Dramatic Society. She was also completely enamored of the films and enjoyed going out to nightclubs. Indian journalist Snanda K. Datta Ray claimed that Merle worked as a telephone operator in Calcutta under the name Queenie Thompson, and won a contest at Firpo's restaurant there, before the outset of her film career. In 1929, Merle met a former actor named Colonel Ben Finney at Firpo's, and dated him. However, when he saw Oberon's dark-skinned mother one night at her flat, and realized Oberon was mixed race, he decided to end the relationship. However, Finney promised to introduce her to Rex Ingram of Victorine Studios, if she was prepared to travel to France. Which she readily did. After packing all their belongings and moving to France, Oberon and her mother found that their supposed benefactor avoided them, although he had left a good word for Oberon with Ingram at the studios in Nice. Ingram liked Oberon's exotic appearance and quickly hired her to be an extra in a party scene in a film named The Three Passions. Acting career. Oberon arrived in England for the first time in 1928, aged 17. Initially she worked as a club hostess under the name Queenie O'Brien and played in minor and unbilled roles in various films. I couldn't dance or sing or write or paint. The only possible openings seemed to be in some line in which I could use my face. This was, in fact, no better than 100 other faces, but it did possess a fortunately photogenic quality, she modestly told a journalist at Film Weekly in 1939. In view of the information discovered since this 1939 article, this should be seen as part of a myth perpetrated by Oberon, since apparently she did not reach Europe until 1929. Her film career received a major boost when the director Alexander Korda took an interest and gave her a small but prominent role, under the name Merle Oberon, as Anne Boleyn in The Private Life of Henry VIII opposite Charles Lawton. The film became a major success and she was then given leading roles, such as Lady Blakeney in The Scarlet Pimpernel with Leslie Howard, who became her lover for a while. Oberon's career benefited from her relationship, and later marriage, to Korda. He sold shares of her contract to producer Samuel Goldwyn, who gave her good vehicles in Hollywood. Her mother stayed behind in England. Oberon earned her sole Academy Award for Best Actress nomination for The Dark Angel produced by Goldwyn. Around this time she had a serious romance with David Niven, and according to his authorized biography, even wanted to marry him, but he wasn't faithful to her. She was selected to star in Korda's film I, Claudius as Messalina, but a serious car accident resulted in filming being abandoned. Oberon was scarred for life, but skilled lighting technicians were able to hide her injuries from cinema audiences. She went on to appear as Cathy in her most famous film, Wuthering Heights, as George Sand in A Song to Remember and as the Empress Josephine in Dower Copyright Sierra Copyright E. According to Princess Merle, the biography written by Charles Hyam with Roy Mosley, Oberon suffered even further damage to her complexion in 1940 from a combination of cosmetic poisoning and an allergic reaction to sulfur drugs. Alexander Korda sent her to a skin specialist in New York City, where she underwent several dermabrasion procedures. The results, however, were only partially successful. Without makeup, one could see noticeable pitting and indentation of her skin. Charlotte died in 1937. In 1949 Oberon commissioned paintings of her mother from an old photograph. The paintings hung in all her homes until Oberon's own death in 1979. Merle Oberon had a brief affair in 1941 with Richard Hillary, an RAF fighter pilot who had been badly burned in the Battle of Britain. They met while he was on a goodwill tour of the United States. He later became well known as the author of a best-selling book, The Last Enemy. Death. Merle Oberon became Lady Korda when her husband was knighted in 1942. At the time, the couple were based at Hill's house in Denham, England. She divorced him in 1945, to marry cinematographer Lucien Ballard. Ballard devised a special camera light for her to eliminate her facial scars on film. The light became known as the OB. She married twice more, to Italian-born industrialist, Bruno Pagliai and Dutch actor Robert Wolders later companion to actresses Audrey Hepburn and Leslie Caron before her retirement in Malibu, California, where she died, aged 68, after suffering a stroke. She was interred at Forest Lawn Memorial Park Cemetery in Glendale, California. Merle Oberon has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame for her contributions to motion pictures. Michael Korda, nephew of Alexander Korda, wrote a roman à clef about Oberon after her death entitled Queenie. This was also turned into a television miniseries starring Mia Sara. Disputed birthplace. Oberon claimed that she was born and raised in Tasmania, Australia. The story of her alleged Tasmanian connections was comprehensively debunked after her death. Oberon is known to have been to Australia only twice. Her first visit was in 1965, on a film promotion. Although a visit to Hobart was scheduled, she became ill after journalists in Sydney pressed her for details of her early life, and she left for Mexico shortly afterwards. In 1978, the year before her death, she agreed to visit Hobart for a Lord Mayoral reception. The Lord Mayor of Hobart became aware shortly before the reception that there was no proof she had been born in Tasmania, but went ahead with the reception to save face. However, shortly after arriving at the reception, Oberon denied she had been born in Tasmania, to the disappointment of many. She then excused herself, claiming illness. Whether ill or not, this meant she was unavailable to answer any more questions about her background. On the way to the reception, she had told her driver that as a child she was on a ship with her father, who became ill when it was passing Hobart. They were taken ashore so he could be treated, and as a result she spent some of her early years on the island. This story, too, seems to have been a fabrication. During her Hobart stay, she remained in her hotel, gave no other interviews, and did not visit the theatre named in her honor. Filmography == Short subjects == Screen Snapshot Series 16, Number 4, Hollywood Goes to Town, Assignment, Foreign Legion. Radio appearances. See also, English Rose. References. Notes Bibliography External links. Merle Oberon at the Internet Movie Database, Merle Oberon at the TCM Movie Database, Merle Oberon at the British Film Institute's Screen Online, Classic Movie Favourites website, photographs of Merle Oberon and bibliography, Merle Oberon at Find a Grave Note 1917 The year on headstone. Merle Oberon in Pose for the Dark Angel in Vanity Fair portrait by Cecil Beaton, The Hindu, The Trouble with Merle Investigation of her origins.